We have a great lineup of interesting, captivating conversations for the afternoon. I'm Vijay Limai, a senior scientist within RDC. We're going to begin this afternoon plenary session spotlighting subnational actions on heat and cooling across India. Our speakers are still joining us. I'll invite them to come to the stage when they can. So this session will be moderated by Jaya Dinda. She is the Executive Program Director, WRI India Ross Center. With over 2 decades of international experience, Jaya steers the Sustainable Cities program at WRI India, advancing initiatives at the intersection of urban development, mobility, climate resilience, and planning. Jaya provides strategic direction to teams driving national and subnational reforms, building knowledge systems and partnerships, and delivering place-based interventions that connect global expertise with local needs. So, Jaya, I'll hand the microphone to you to take forward the proceedings of this afternoon session. Thank you, Jaya. Welcome her.
Do you have some microphones at the table?
I'll get them.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are running behind, but we are going to try and make the session super interesting and crisp. I'd like to invite the speakers on stage while the mics are getting set up. So first off, I'd like to invite Sujata Sonik, former Chief Secretary, Government of Maharashtra. Sujata ji, if you could please join us on stage. I would now like to invite Dipinder Kapoor, Head C-Cube National Institute of Urban Affairs. Dipinder, please. A.R. Rahul Nath, Director of Environment and Climate Change, Government of Tamil Nadu. And Dr. Shekhar Lukos Kuriakos, Chief Resilience Officer, Kerala, Member Secretary at Kerala State Disaster Management Authority. Do we have the mic set up? Okay. All right, so just a quick show of hands. How many of us checked on an app or on a weather.com kind of a thing the temperature before we stepped out this morning? All right. So the thing is that that's us, and then there's 80% of India that just negotiates with the heat because they don't have access to either the fancy apps or any way of even finding out what the day is going to look like. So 2 things, to start off with. One is something that we often overlook, but basically climate resilience and heat is a development agenda. It's not and no longer only a climate agenda anymore. And second of all, it is not episodic when it comes to places like India. So we can't talk about it only in terms of heat waves. We are having longer summers, just longer heat in general. So the heat in places like India is continuous, it is differential, and it is impacting the most vulnerable. Now, just over the last month, right, we have seen really high temperatures across many places in the country. And what is more concerning is some of these facts, right? In the first few months of this year, 90% of India faced at least 1 hour of extreme heat stress, right? The second point is that 70% of India's districts and more are now susceptible and classified as being vulnerable to extreme heat. The third point is that less than 10% of the Indian population have any access to forms of cooling. By contrast, China has 90% air conditioning penetration. So our cooling demands are going to be jumping 8-folds in the coming decade. We're at a paradox. Those who need cooling the most have the least access to it. And this could either lock us in the ways in which we provide this cooling demand is going to either lock us into very high carbon futures and a lot of this air conditioning and hot air spewing out in the public commons, or it could lead us to an equitable one. But beyond numbers, heat inequality, I think all of us have also experienced it in our everyday lives. Recently, I took an auto in Bangalore. Bangalore is a temperate and a moderate kind of a city in terms of its weather and temperatures. The temperature outside was 36 degrees, air temperature, and of course the feels like was a bit higher. I decided to take an auto, and when we got to our destination, the auto driver's app mobile stopped working. Anyways, the charges and everything were paid in cash, and I was like, so how are you going to get your next ride? And he basically said, well, I'll just start getting the customers who are going to hail, and, they're going to stop me this way, and my phone's not working anymore. So that's that, right? So heat means very different things for different people. And essentially, some of the advisories that we put out through HAPS are luxuries that, majority of the people cannot afford. So even though we have heat action plans, they can be really problematic in terms of, being either episodic or just looking at advisories or basically being very siloed in their nature. This is something that I think Sujata-ji was talking about yesterday, and we'll discover that some more. So how do we move from managing heat as a crisis to designing it as a constant? I think intellectually, most of us have accepted that, heat is a one-way street now, it's only going to increase, but I think we still have a hard time really accepting the fact that, okay, this is a one-way street, we're not going back to anything different, this is the new normal, how do we negotiate within this? And this is where the subnational governments really come in, and their role becomes absolutely critical. There is evidence of good action that is happening in various places, and we're starting to see that. A lot of the levers for subnational action are like urban planning, building design, public health systems, labor, and all of that all of those authorities rest with the subnational government, and so that's a good place to start. We are seeing good shifts. We are seeing states thinking about cooling as part of their economic and infrastructure planning, states like Tamil Nadu, cities experimenting with nature-based solutions and climate budgeting. Nashik is one that we are working in, Bangalore, several others, and emerging efforts to institutionalize coordination across departments. Maharashtra is doing that, Kerala is doing that, and we'll hear more about that. But the scale and speed of what the challenge demands is much, much more. And today's conversation is really going to focus on that. It is going to be how do we move from all the plans that we have, and we do pride ourselves on the plans that we have, the several that we've created, but how do we move from those plans to projects, and not just projects that address heat in the current terms, but the heat that we're going to be experiencing in the next 5 to 10 years. And second is how do we move from coping with heat to kind of accepting that as a new reality, and then looking at how do we drive thermal comfort at scale. So please join me once again with a round of applause for all our speakers here, and I look forward to the conversation. All right, so Sujata-ji, I'm going to start with you first. Essentially, we want to look at how do we move from some of the ad hoc responses that we are having around us through different stakeholders, government, otherwise, in the ecosystem? How do we move from that to a more disciplined approach where all the departments that need to be involved in this conversation can get involved, and how do they make some of this coordination happen and make that a more embedded system within these institutions?
Let me unpack this a little bit for, I think, better understanding how things work within the government. So governments are typically, there's a system that's designed, and there are something called rules of business which govern the way each department works. So that's the system that's supposed to work. Problem is not over there. This very infamous silos we keep talking about, that there's silos and people don't coordinate with each other and they don't talk to each other. This is more outcome of human behavior. And it's not just in the government, it's also outside the government. Many systems where there are a number of sections or departments working together, you will often find that people don't necessarily talk to each other or share information and work together. In contrast, the strength of the government system is that there is an elected leadership which is answerable to the electorate. So if there is any malfunctioning in any part of government, this leadership will always ask you to do what you ought to be doing, so there is accountability in the system. I think what is happening now, to answer the question more specifically, with increasing awareness about climate vagaries and how it's impacting human life, as well as processes within a system, including livelihoods, economic activity, there is now a scenario where willy-nilly people are coming together to work together and to find those solutions. It's, I think, a question of leadership often. The personalities involved in this. Typically, the relief and rehabilitation department of any government is not the most preferred posting people want. Even if they go there for some time and by the time they settle down, they are itching to get out. It's a handful of people who find it attracts them because they get really passionate about what they are doing. And that's how these departments continue to function. And this could be at any level. It need not necessarily be always at the top level. So I think what's happening now with the increasing changes that we are seeing around us and this urgency, like what happened during COVID, everyone, I mean, it became so syncretic at that time. Everyone came together, including outside agencies, means outside the government, NGOs, civil societies, academia, intelligence, everyone came together to work. I think that same thing is now visible within climate change related departments, which are many within the government, where an effort is to at least try and collaborate. And I think that could be a game changer.
And I'm just going to ask you a follow-up on that. In terms of trying to collaborate, and you have actually been instrumental in instituting something like that in Maharashtra with the Center of Excellence on heat resilience. Can you tell us about your vision for the center and how that came to be?
I'm very happy to talk about the center. So I have been involved in this because as part of my career growth, I also served in Delhi in the National Disaster Management Authority. And in those days, NDMA itself was coming up. It was in the early days of the NDMA. In fact, the NDRF, that is the response force, was created during that period. So a little bit of sensitization to these issues has been a part of my career growth. And after having served as a public health secretary, I realized that the climate is having a huge impact on public health as well. So it's the elephant in the room. If you don't address these issues, they are only going to become bigger. So with that kind of understanding that I developed over the years, and my continued association with NRDC, we have been talking to each other, partnering each other for almost now, I think since sometime in early 2014-15. So it's been more than a decade now that I have been associated also with the NRDC. So this growing understanding led me to feel, when I was here for the last global forum, that there needs to be a center. And ideally in Maharashtra, I was a little bit particular about that. It should be in Nagpur, which is the center of India and faces extreme heat. And I thought that a center could continually, so the vision I had for the center was, it should continually work on the subject, not just sort of summer season, we start to do something, roll out of HAP, etc., and as soon as the monsoon comes, then everything is forgotten for the next 6 months. So I wanted a center which could continually work on various aspects and bring the best faculty from around the world, experts from around the world. So it not just be a national center, but a global center in this region, and support what we call the street level bureaucrats, who are every day pursuing an agenda for strengthening, for building resilience, and help them to be privy to some of the best practices across the world and learn from each other and grow together and be able to make a significant contribution to managing heat.
No, that's wonderful, and we look forward to how this center evolves. It's been over a year now, and yes, more power to institutions like this. I'll come to you now, Rahulji, and do you have a presentation that you wanted to make, or are we just going to go with the questions?
Yeah, I have a few slides because I think seeing is believing, so wanted to show you some of the works which we did for Tamil Nadu.
Sure, so we can do that, and then I'll come to the question.
Sure. Good evening to all. Thank you. As you all know that Tamil Nadu is one state which has been pioneering in the heat action. We were one of the first state which has announced heat as a state-specific disaster. So anybody who is affected by heat will be given an ex gratia which is at par with any other disasters. And we have taken it forward, and we have also in the process of coming up with integrating many of these heat-related issues, the passive, the cooling plans and all into our planning action. So here, quickly, I just wanted to showcase 3 or 4 of our initiatives regarding subnational heat and action on heat and cooling. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. One of the pioneering work which we did was launching this initiative called Cool Roof Initiative, where we have found out that application of this SRI cool roof paint will tremendously reduce the temperature. So we started with a pilot in one of the slum clearance board tenements in Perumbakam, which is right inside Chennai, where we found out that the application of Sika cool roof paint actually reduced the roof temperatures by 9 to 12% and indoor temperatures by close to 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. And it has also increased the comfort range from 65% to 85%. So continuing that program, we have selected around 300 schools throughout the state where we are in the process of implementing the cool roof scheme. Already 7 schools were completed. We also did a scientific study in collaboration with UNEP, where we have published the data. We have published a small report on it, where around 7 to 8 degrees Celsius of reduction in temperatures were noted. Going forward, we'll be implementing it in phase-wise throughout all the schools in Tamil Nadu. Another big program which we have undertaken is the gig workers AC lounges. So everybody knows that the most vulnerable people are the gig workers, because they work especially between those peak hours of heat from 11 to 2. That's when the maximum orders come. So realizing that, we have built India's first dedicated air-conditioned rest spaces for the delivery workers. It's fully air-conditioned. We have given them 24/7 access. It also has provisions for mobile charging, provisions for drinking water, and all those things. So right now, there are 2 active locations and around 500 plus daily users. We are planning to extend it to the rest of the municipal corporations across Tamil Nadu. Following this, we have also implemented something called the construction workers resting shelters. These are also another vulnerable community where they have to, continuously work for 8 hours, especially in the scorching sun. So this was actually done in almost 23 active locations throughout the state. And again, it's similar to what was done in the Greater Chennai Corporation. It is completely owned and operated by the Municipal Administration Department. Another thing which we wanted to do was in nature-based heat mitigation and climate resilience sector, where we have 2 mega sponge parks in Chennai. One of the sponge parks is named after Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, which was much written about. And where we have also in the process of creating 68 mini sponge parks in Chennai alone, where blue-green infrastructure and a lot of plantation activities will be undertaken. And this is one of the studies which were done in the M.S. Swaminathan Sponge Park, where we have seen a clear difference in the temperature, where in an unshaded parking, it's around 51.8 degrees Celsius, whereas if you come to the shaded area near water body or shaded green area, you can see a drastic reduction in the temperature. So we are going to replicate it in other parts of the state as well. Another major breakthrough is the tea and urban greening policy, which we have launched in 2026, where our target is to have a minimum of 15% green cover in all the municipalities and municipal corporations. In turn, increasing the state green cover to 33%. And we have adopted a policy of 3, 30, and 300, which says 3 trees visibly from every home, 30% canopy cover in every neighborhood, and 300-meter distance to the nearest green space. This is completely GIS-based, the planning. And we are giving importance to the native species because most of our cities, especially the coastal cities of Chennai, Thoothukudi and all, are prone to cyclones, and we have found out that the native species can actually withstand those cyclones. So this is actually the picture of one of the schools in Chennai, which was actually completely painted with a cool roof, and the students have measured the difference in the temperature, and it is being published as the cool roof school report in our website, where we found a reduction of around 8 degrees Celsius in the school. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask you a follow-up question. It was wonderful to see all of these initiatives that have been rolled out. Financing is often spoken about as a bottleneck when it comes to adaptation in general and heat in specific. As part of TNGCC, what is some of the more innovative financing solutions that are coming about to support these kind of interventions? If you could just talk about.
See, financing is again a major problem when it comes to the issues of climate change. As Sujata ma'am was mentioning that right now government has realized that it's a priority sector. So first of all, government budget itself is one of the major financing options which we are thinking about. The second issue is we have come up with something called Green Fund. It's a subnational fund where 100 crore was dedicated by the government, and we plan to increase the corpus to around 1,000 crores, wherein we will fund those startups. And the initial fund of around 100 crores were rolled out recently in the Tamil Nadu International Climate Summit. That's a second way to look at it. The third is we are also increasingly involving a lot of the industries, because Tamil Nadu is one of the leading industrial hubs in the country, through corporate social responsibility, through the corporate environmental responsibility. We are also giving them some kind of incentives, and we are encouraging them to undertake some of these initiatives. Actually, some of the industries in Chennai has given a commitment that they'll be implementing the school roof schools in all the Chennai corporation schools. So that's how we are slowly, we are also in the process of getting some of the international funds, like we already have a project called TN Shore by World Bank, where we are undertaking nature-based solutions like, bioshields, creation of mangroves, and a lot of other programs.
Thank you very much. Dr. Shekhar, coming to you, you also have a presentation, I believe. Would you like to go ahead and share?
If I can have the presentation on screen. I shared it You got it? Thanks. So it's a pleasure to be sitting next to Sujata ma'am. When I joined disaster management way back in 2011, ma'am was already in NDMA, and it's so nice to meet her again. In Kerala, the thought process of this heats didn't begin with we, the wise-minded people. It all started with the great Larry Baker. All of you would know. Larry Baker understood that the temperatures are going to change, and that the buildings and infrastructure needs to be adequately designed. And he has his followers, Habitat, Architect Shankar, Cosford, Sarjan, Eugene, all of them have been trying to adapt and incorporate these designs. Now, I'll be talking about what we did more systematically, probably with a perspective in mind. Next slide, please. I thank my colleagues Fahad Marzouk and Rajivan for putting this together. Can I go to the... Oh, we have it here. Yeah, thanks. Slow. We all speak about Kerala as a green space, but you can see, as we speak today, it's 41 degrees. Just a day back, it was 40.1, and there were times when we hit 41.9. So you can see the maximum temperature has been soaringly high, particularly towards Palghat, but Palghat is not the only space where we get to see this. The first set of impacts of heat was measured in 2010 by the then Center for Earth Science Studies. We had a very detailed study then, conducted by famous scientist, Mr. Sakaria, and we were advised on various actions that we need to take up with respect to this. And 2016 onwards, we started issuing heat alerts based on IMD's inputs. 2016, for the first time, IMD confirmed a heat wave condition in Kerala. 2016, the first death was also confirmed. And 2018 onwards, we started rescheduling the working times of laborers. And 2019, the second death was confirmed. 2019, we notified it as a state-specific disaster. So for Mr. Rahul, for you to know, one of the oldest states, one of the very pioneering states which went on recognizing heat as a problem was not a severely drought-prone state, but was Kerala, because we realized that it was not just about heat, it is also about humidity, and therefore you would have heard when Mrityunjay sir was telling in the morning, it's hot and humid. That's what is more troubling in Kerala. And 2019 onwards, we started formally financing DDMAs to undertake different actions. So first tranche, we gave off 50 lakhs per DDMAs. Now they have that money. This year we have increased it to 1 crore. And then we went on to provide access for the state, the local governments in the state. And you know, Kerala is very decentralized in that sense. We started giving them access to the mitigation fund. Kerala had a mitigation fund from 2012 onwards. So we had access to that. Then 2020, we published the heat action plan, developed multilingual IECs. You can see that. We also decided to have an energy management plan, which is related to this. And we went on to establish our own UV radiometer network, because in Kerala, as I told you, it was not just about heat, it was also about humidity and UV. And IMD didn't have a UV network, which was measuring that formally, so we created a network, and that data is available open, and daily we issue alerts to for each district as to what would be the indicative UV dosage for that day. Cool Anganwadi project was also launched. More than 200 Anganwadis have now been cooled by this process. Education department introduced what is called this water bill. I hope some of you would have heard of it. Now every school with a hour difference has to go on and ring bells so that children consume at least 2 liters of water a day. And this was put in place. For the first time, we also came out with a program to support cardamom farmers in Kerala with a 10 crore assistance from State Disaster Mitigation Fund, because in 2024, a lot of cardamom plantations got impacted by extreme heat. So we created a mitigation fund, and then from the fund, we started assisting them. So that's about 10 crores that we rolled out on that space. And now we have gone to another level. We realize that heat in an urban area is pretty fine. At least to some extent, we still have electricity. We'll all be able to cool it down. But the rural India is where the heat is really impacting, and you were talking about differential impacts of heat. So what we thought was that there is a necessity for all Gram Panchayats to have its heat action plan. So we issued a guideline, and in Calicut district, in Kozhikode district, Moodadi Gram Panchayat published its own heat action plan and started funding it with their own funds and the plan funds of the government. So that's where we went on. In 2026, we achieved 1,348 acres of Miyawaki forests in the municipalities and corporations of the state. And now, as on this year when we speak, we have increased the allocation for the DDMAs to 1 crore. And as I was telling Madam also, just when I came in and sat, tomorrow we will have the second heat meeting of this year, chaired by Chief Secretary. So we also did a lot of work with Woodwell Climate Foundation and Geohazard Society in looking at which are the areas where we have to be focusing our actions on for the future. Now coming to my last slide, I have few suggestions, which I think I leave it open for all of you to think. Institutional heat action plans is something that I think we will have to look about. For example, gig workers, for example, having to have some additional timing to kind of come up and deliver. Reduce heat exposure, outdoor works between 11 and 3 p.m. Adapt and promote heat resilient materials for building. Promote wood-based furniture. We have all given away with wood in many places. You see all of that is steel, but maybe 20 years back when if we were here, we would have been seeing wood-based furniture. Increase solar and wind power use. Increase reflective coating, that also we need to bring in through the National Building Code. If we are only starting to talk through heat action plans and all, it's not going to get implemented. We have to bring it through the National Building Code. Increase the current employee seating occupancy, and that's something that we tend to ignore everywhere. We believe that the current spacing is sufficient. No, probably we need to give them more space, and we suggest about 25% increase in that space. We also think that liquid trees can do a lot of good things. So if you look at those pictures there, if you come to my office, we don't, at least in my room, he has been there and Aditya here has been there. I don't use air conditioner, but I have a liquid tree sitting there and it cools sufficiently enough. So I think these kind of innovative solutions can also help in. He was mentioning about startup, this is by a startup. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shekhar. So, Dr. Shekhar, follow-up question for you. Kerala is unique in that somehow multi-level governance and coordination works really well in the state, right? So, from the KSTMA's perspective, how are you aligning roles and responsibilities across KSTMA but also other agencies to implement heat and cooling initiatives, and what can other sort of region states learn from what you're doing?
This is a question that actually needs to be understood from the context of Kerala. Kerala is known for its local governance. So I sit on the advantage of having that strength in the local governments, that capacity in the local government to implement the visions that the state government or the state missionary wants to be implemented. And they have their own innovative brains, which is probably far more superior than the collective brain at the state, because they know the local needs and therefore they deliver at the local level. Our role, we believe, is to facilitate that with technical know-how. So for example, if we go look at Mudadi Gram Panchayat, which did its heat action plan, we supported them with data, we supported them with possible interventions from a basket of interventions that was offered to them, and they picked and chose what they wanted. So you can do that when that local government has that level of capacity. So for, what Kerala is able to do in terms of coordination, in terms of getting these things implemented, is because of that traditional strength it has. Now, when it comes to how we coordinate, at the state level, I was just mentioning, tomorrow we have the second heat conference chaired by the Chief Secretary. Every department will be there. For every one, we have one slide which tells them what we expect them to be doing. We are able to communicate that, and then thereafter they are able to take it up because of two things. One, Disaster Management Act, I was mentioning in the morning session also, has two angles to it. One, that of a carrot, and the other, that of a stick. The carrot is essentially the SDRF, SDMF, because if you are telling anything overboard beyond what their traditional working style is, like ma'am was mentioning about the business rules within the government, if you say one step more than that, they will say, okay, where do the funds come from? Because we don't have that allocation. That's where the SDRMF or SDRF and MF will come in place, where we can say, you want to do that? Here is the money. Please do it. Now, they don't have an excuse of not having the funds. Second aspect of it is, once something is assigned to them at the level of the State Executive Committee, there is also a stick hanging on them. And that stick comes from none other than the topmost 5 secretaries in the state. So the 5, anybody who is not implementing is directly answerable to the senior most 5 secretaries. I wouldn't dare going in front of ma'am when she is a chief secretary and telling her, no, I was not able to implement because I was asleep. No, that lame excuses won't work. So it's a carrot and a stick. So that's what we do. We effectively try to utilize that.
Wonderful. Dipinder, coming to you, I believe you also have a presentation. Would you like to share that? Sure. And I'll ask you.
Good afternoon. While this presentation I'm sharing is developed by my colleague Deepshika, please raise your hand if you're there. After she's gone out. So before I come to this, I was very happy to hear from the panelists their experience, and my own experience in the urban space is relatively recent because I worked in the rural development side earlier, and then in the disaster side, and then to the climate. So if we look at, we're discussing heat right now, but when I started work in 88, there were 3 years of drought, 85 to 87. It was considered a very, tense time. But the 3-year drought did not lead to either Bangalore having 36 degrees or Kerala. I mean, I was in Kerala in 87, and they used to say that it's a drought, but people from North India come and they see everything is green and they don't realize it's a drought. So the kind of climate impact which is there is very different today than it was about 30 years ago. And coming, therefore, to the issue at hand, at NIUA, we focus on supporting the cities because NIUA is part of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So it has a mandate to support cities in its various programs. So I'm with the Climate Center for Cities. So the idea here is to, about 5 years ago, the Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework was taken up as a nudge to push cities to do something about climate in 4 or 5 areas which were under their control. And from there, climate action plans and capacity building. But now, in the last year, we realized that a lot of focus now is in grounding climate action, in actually trying to do something about heat, flooding, landslides, and other challenges. So when we look at, so we were supporting NDMA for their urban flood risk management plans for for Delhi. And the URFMP, as it was called, was looking at an approach of how to address urban flooding from the perspective that flooding is now a reality which is different from earlier ones, which it was riverine flooding earlier, now it is in situ urban flooding. And therefore, how can cities be functional and still deal with floods? So I think it's very similar with heat. Earlier also, the sun was the same. It's also now in situ heating, which we are calling UHI now. And how to deal with it and how to live with it is the way forward, and there is no other option. So this framework which we have developed is a follow-up for the urban flood resilience framework which we came up with. And now we have this urban heat resilience framework. So I'll just, without wasting much time, go to it. So this framework is for 12 cities in India, which Mahua has now initiated a demonstration pilot project for 12 cities in India, where the ministry is giving 5 crores per city for implementing any intervention, up to the city to decide, and also capacity building support. So it's to cover 2 seasons, this summer and the next summer. So it's an initiative for which we have developed the guidelines, and the framework is part of the guidelines. So it is done in the spirit that it will help cities implement the program. It's not meant as an academic explanation of the problem. So if there is an assessment on these 2 levels done, on baseline and on the vulnerability, then this is part of our guidelines, so it goes to the cities. So therefore, you develop a heat resilience perspective. which I was very fortunate to hear from Rajneesh and the CSC team, the way they have done this kind of a city cooling perspective. So we said, okay, that is the first step before you come to interventions. And the interventions are, again, listed stepwise. It's not for this audience, you know things better. But how to come across to cities, these are the 6 steps you need to do. At least identify 2-3 interventions to begin with, while you list out and prioritize other interventions. And then finally, to come up with a heat resilience plan. So this is a very simple framework, which is, you know, I taught for a year, and sometimes when you deal with people, you have to repeat the thing again and again. So this is again an explanation of the previous slide, but broken up into more detail for each of the boxes, and I won't read that to you. Then, so now the third one is more of an adaptation. The first was on coping. Essentially, how do you do what you do? But here you see you have other elements introduced, which includes reimagining city systems and looking at cross-sectoral benefits. So this is, again, something which we believe that any urban heat resilience framework needs to have a reimagining of the larger infrastructure. It is not just about interventions. So this is explained in that sense with more details of what kind of interventions you can do. That comes last. Otherwise, typically, this comes the first slide. And that's what we did not want to do. I mean, most cities would be happy with just doing interventions, which we did not want. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipinder. So, Dipinder, your second slide, well, it stopped at the heat action plan or the heat resilience plan. So the question is that how do we move beyond the plan to embed heat resilience within all sort of urban systems? And a 2-part question. The second is you wearing your NIUA hat and capacity being talked about as one of the major sort of bottlenecks, again, when it comes to implementing a lot of these plans. How can NIUA help cities overcome that barrier?
See, the first question is too broad, but the second one I would start. I think NIUA is not an implementing agency. So NIUA can only support with frameworks, with technical assistance, which we do, and with capacity building interventions. So there we came up recently under a GIZ project with 4 training modules. And these may look very simple and basic, but the first one is on understanding climate science, where our focus is on mitigation. Second, on adaptation, where we bring in these frameworks, both urban flooding and heat. Third is on institutions, and fourth is on financing. So they may look very simple, but the capacity building, we can only take step by step and then look at interventions and take it on from there.
Got it. Thank you. I'm going to end with a round of closing questions and see if we have time for audience questions after this. But, and this is the same question for all of you, is that this year, in terms of heat resilience strategies, what should be our top priority for investment? One thing. Sujata ji, I'll start with you.
Top priority should be given to training and capacity building. Most important, because people change, new people come in, new recruits are there, some retire. So for a team to work effectively, it's important that they all agree to work as per a standardized kind of a approach. And also there are so many things to learn from. Like there are new experiments happening, there are new things, even within India, there's different states coming out with different policies, different approaches. So it would be great to invest in capacity building and training.
Capacity building, peer learning also, like you mentioned. Thank you. Rahulji?
I think 2 things. One, I concur with ma'am, more awareness among the people. And we need to strengthen our health institutions, especially in dealing with the heat. Because I don't think many of our hospitals, government hospitals are, especially in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are well equipped to deal with heat strokes and related issues. So I think these two.
Absolutely. The capacities of even the frontline workers in these places need to be enhanced. Yes, Dr. Shekhar.
From my perspective, I'm not just talking about heat, but it is about strengthening local governments with capacities to address resilience building. And that's where we need to invest in. There is, Madam was mentioning about these silos. To break the silos, you require somebody who is responsible for resilience as a theme. And that's why in Kerala we have a resilience officer officiating position. And similarly, at the local government level, you need that capacities where there is a person, an individual responsible to connect all these dots together and provide that technical input, professional input to the local government to build on resilience.
But first, instituting that local government and empowering it.
Yeah, we have done that for one local government as an experiment. So if it succeeds, we'll scale.
Right. Wonderful. Dipinder?
I think capacity building is already mentioned, and there I would say also that given the fact that officers get transferred very fast, there should be a strategy which we followed in NIUA in my previous work as in the sanitation capacity building platform. We used to have an orientation training for all state level, and then from there we would identify planning and design modules for engineers and specific officers. So instead of doing one-off trainings, it needs to be strategized into 2-3 years program. And NIUA did that as a capacity building for urban development. But there was one initiative. So I think something in climate should also be in that perspective, not as just one training or one intervention. And secondly, strengthening institution, because now these climate cells are coming up. And unfortunately, the role, the mandate, the staffing, what functions they will perform is not very clear. So they may end up being data centers rather than actually being able to support the cities and the state level at state level to support smaller towns to do something meaningful in climate.
All right, so clear and resounding need for building capacities and awareness across the board. I have 3 more minutes for this session. I can take a couple of questions. Yes, please, go ahead. Can we get a few mics in the audience? Or actually, if you could just state your name and your question.
So I'm Neetu Jain, and founder for Panache Green Tech Solutions Private Limited. And I feel pleasure to share that I started my journey with the cool roof development 16 years back. And that time, I was the only one talking about this and first one to get the SRI certified also. In this journey, like we have our products tested, time tested. It's not laboratory tested. So one of the aspect that always come, I'm also educated with CRRC, that is Cool Roof Rating Council. And one aspect come is like when we select the product, we are seeking only the SRI value. But sustainable performance is a very big criteria because technically 3 features are there. But if we talk about the sustainable performance and the application is on roof, there are many other parameters that need to be considered before selecting any product. So regarding sustainable performance, like what are the criteria that we are keeping when we are selecting the products? Because otherwise what we are seeing is like many government projects just dump because after 6 years the coating is coming out, after 1 year the coating is coming out. So it needs to have its sustainable performance demonstrated and established.
Got it. Thank you, Neetu. Can we just have the next question? We'll collect a couple and we'll answer them together.
Yeah, I want to bring to kind notice, earlier we used to have asbestos sheets, rooftop, in most of the industrial area and middle class and lower class families. And it was found to be a carcinogenic. Now I think it's banned anywhere in the world, or India also. So why not to have same control on cement? All homes are made by cement. So cement is also heat generating, so we can have some alternative to cement so that there's a decrease in temperature also.
All right, so alternative materials. Any other question? Yes, behind you.
Hi, I'm Ripu Daman Bevli from Rain Matter Foundation, and a couple of things were very interesting to me. The Mudadi Gram Panchayat that you spoke about, also disaster heat as a disaster metric now that you guys are talking about, and everybody spoke about capacity building. So a couple of things. How can we build this understanding, like the Mudadi Gram Panchayat? How can we have the same level of empowerment and agency built into local governance across the country? Because today when we talk about resilience, it will not come from top down. It has to be built within the communities. And the second thing, because everybody spoke about capacity building, is what are we doing on the youth mobilization and youth agency? Because I think if we specifically talk about capacities, then youth is the power that we're not leveraging enough. And I speak from my own experience because I've gone around the country and mobilized communities across around waste, around littering, and now we're trying to build this change-making network as well. And I don't see enough thought being put into what can we do when it comes to youth, especially with the heat and climate change. So that will be my question. Thank you.
Sounds good. So the first question on the sustainability of the cool roofing materials, the second one on alternative building materials, and the third one on engaging youth. Potentially, I'm giving this to you. Yeah.
Regarding sustainable materials?
Or anyone who wants to answer that.
I think you should. The material
Yeah, I think, thank you for the question. I think this field is slowly emerging right now because we have had a meeting with close to 5 of the top producers of this cool roof paints, because many of them are located in different industrial estates of Tamil Nadu. And all of them have been, coming up with new technologies and all. One of the major challenges, I should tell you, in the government level was including this in the schedule of rates of the PWD, because many of us are in government. The problem is the moment the rate is not included in the SOR, it won't get done. So that was the first thing which we did. So right now, it's actually a properly, curated government project. But as you said, durability of this product is still a major problem because, it may not survive a few years. So I think still it's evolving. I think the technology is catching up. The industries are also very keen to, catch up with the growing demand. And once, the awareness spreads, I think more durable and more sustainable materials may emerge.
Thank you. The other one on alternative materials, you started with Laurie Baker, so Dr. Shekhar, it should be you.
One, there are a lot of experiments happening in this game. I know in Kerala there are multi-storied buildings being built by prefab material. Very recently, there is also a startup company which is producing a particular kind of brick with majority plastic, reused, recycled plastic. And that has been tested and proven in the Central Building Research Institute also and is scaling heights. So it's only a matter of time that we would end up having a lot of this. One of the things that I mentioned in my presentation, also you may want to think a bit more loud, is to bring back the wood-based industry. This wood would have captured that carbon which it would have acquired through its lifetime and is still holding it there. This is the only material which holds it there. Not any of that steel, not any of that cushions that we use. So if we can leverage on this vast fallow land in this country and bring back that wood-based industry, wood is still a very sensible building material in this country. Let's not go into the forest, but then we can plant it and use it. Hardwood. Now, one question with respect to what you asked about scaling the Mudadi experiment. In Kerala, we have a program called Living Labs. We have a living lab in Kanichar Grama Panchayat with the theme of landslides. In Mudadi, it is heat. In Edavanakad, it is coastal hazard. So what we do is, from SDMA, we directly engage with these local governments and we support them in coming up with their own action plans for various disasters. And the idea of doing that is, once one panchayat acquires it and imbibes it, the neighboring panchayats will pick up from that. And Kerala has that attitude of doing it because we have a center of excellence called KILA, Kerala Institute of Local Administration, where once a panchayat does something good, they develop modules around it to communicate it to other panchayats. Now, when we start thinking of India at large, the levels are different. The local government capacities in Kerala is not the local government capacities of some other state. So that difference is there. Therefore, as a disaster manager, if you give me a stash of funds and ask me to invest, my first investment is always in local governments. Strengthening and capacitating them is where the change begins. And Kerala's Kudumbashree, for example, the women self-help group, 30 lakh women. The beauty of it is the resilience of the women, the resilience that they have achieved by this. And coming back to your question on youth, the National Disaster Management Authority is now funding a program called Aapta Mitra across India. In Kerala, we have more than 20,000 Aapta Mitras. And they are all equipped and trained to address disasters, not just in the response phase, but also in the preparatory phase, and also as champions of disaster risk reduction, to go around and talk about disaster risk reduction. So youth engagement is very actively happening. But can we not leverage more youth? Yes. But by and large, youth engagement is also voluntary. Now, when it comes to volunteerism, not everybody can give away one day's work and kind of go into volunteerism for the common good. So we have to also balance it carefully between the common good and somebody's bread. So there are lots of efforts happening. Maybe it's not to the scale that we would want it to be, but it will happen. It's happening largely. I heard Honorable Prime Minister himself was suggesting that anybody who wants to be Aapta Mitra, we should train them and bring them to become an Aapta Mitra. So you see, you can go to My Bharat, register there and say, I want to be an Aapta Mitra. It probably will become our responsibility to ensure that you are trained and you are an Aapta Mitra. So if such kind of top-down policy leverages are given to states and, like ma'am said, to quote her, the street level officers, then you will have more engagement happening.
Great, thank you very much. And I think in the spirit of the questions around innovation, I will add that I think solutioning is needed at huge speed and scale right now, and we are in a climate emergency or heat emergency where we'll have to test, iterate, learn, and that process will have to go on. And that spirit, WRI India is running something called the Keep Cool Challenge. So for all the innovators in the room and the others that you may know, this is a challenge that we are running to surface these kind of innovations, which are for either personalized cooling or community or city or even rural, cooling, and also to protect livelihoods of the bottom 50%. So those kind of solutions and, looking at how can those be surfaced and how can they be mainstreamed. So look that challenge up as well. And with that, we bring this panel to a close. Thank you all very much. And we move to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, and panelists for such fantastic insights on the state level. Please join me in thanking all of them. We have a small token of appreciation we'll share with you as you exit the stage. Just a few housekeeping notes. So we're about an hour behind. Our next parallel thematic sessions will run starting in just a few minutes at 5 p.m. 5 to 7, so we'll have in here in the Leaders Lounge the South-South Cooperation session. And downstairs in MR7, we will have the protection pathways for informal and gig workers. We'll start those promptly. And then at 7:15, we'll convene back here for a special performance, Dastangoy.